Hi, welcome to the Live and Invest Overseas podcast. This is Kat Kalashian coming to you from Paris. And today I am joined by our good friend in London, Sophia Titley, who is our editorial director and was a longtime expat in Bali, which was one of our big winners in this year's Overseas Retirement Index, which we do every year. If you're not familiar, it's a giant 200 plus page guide to where in the world is best for retiring this year, specifically 2023. And our top winners, our top three were, could you actually remind me, Sophia? Our top was Chitre, Panama, right?
We're Portugal. And then number 3 was Medellin, Colombia.
Okay. And Bali, where was Bali on the list?
Bali was in 9th place out of the 10 top picks for retirement in 2023.
However, as we are quick to remind everyone, that should not mean that it is by any means bottom of the pile or that it is a loser in any way. Just making the cut for this index is a big deal already. You know, we have to narrow things down from all the many thousands and thousands of places in the world that one might like to retire. And it's a really tough decision every year to narrow things down and thin slice, as we like to say. So the fact that Bali is on the list at all is quite a coup. And Bali is a regular winner, a regular appearer on the index because it does have so much going for it. And it is a pretty well-established expat haven for all kinds of folks, whether you're a digital nomad, a student, surfer, a gastronome, or a retiree, of course. So, Sophia, could you tell us a little bit about your history with Bali and what took you there originally?
Yes, for sure. So I'm Canadian, but I was actually born overseas. I was born in Singapore, and my family lived in Indonesia, in Jakarta, which is on a different island in Indo. But Jakarta is the big city. And as my parents were, a young family, we would always go to Bali to spend time and enjoy ourselves, visit the beaches, try Balinese cuisine, etc. So kind of spent the first few years of my life in Bali regularly, and that laid the foundations for my family later on to come back. So we moved around the world a lot, but my mom and my sister eventually resettled in Bali, I don't know how many years ago, over a decade ago. And so I've been continuing to spend time there ever since I was a little kid. So I kind of connected to my childhood in a big way. And then as an adult, I've been lucky enough to be able to go back at least once a year. The pandemic kind of threw things off, but I spent a lot of time there as an adult as well.
Great. And as a child expat myself, I can speak to the fact that if you are in a place so young, you really do kind of consider it home, no matter how long you spend there or, how often you're able to go back. You have that deep connection with it. And so I think that lends a certain amount of familiarity and maybe even a different level of, integration and feeling like you belong there. So you have a very unique perspective, and it's a great insider scoop for us to pick your brain a little bit about what it's like to live there. So you've continued to go back. Obviously, your family is there, so that's one reason to go back. But why do you personally like to go back? What draws you back?
Kind of what you're just saying, like the nostalgia element for me. Like as a little kid, I really didn't understand that I wasn't Indonesian or Balinese. I thought that I was from there. I figured that out later on that I'm not from there. But so aside from nostalgia, it would be, the top thing that comes to mind is just such a beautiful place. It's such a unique landscape. Indonesian is an archipelago, so it's kind of that Hawaii style, big green mountains rising out of the sea. It has amazing beaches, first and foremost. I think that's the reason it's so famous today. It's just that amazing scenery, and it's full of amazing wildlife. I really like scuba diving, snorkeling, that sort of thing. So it's one of the best places in the world to be if you're interested in wildlife sighting. Then the people, they really set the tone of the place, and it's a cliche to say, but they're literally the nicest people in the world. They're so unassuming, non-judgmental, etc., and very welcoming, despite the drastic changes that have happened over the past couple of decades with Bali. Like it's just gone up and up and up in popularity, and they're welcoming of all types of people, not just certain tourists, because Bali also attracts a diverse type of tourist, but we can talk about that separately. And then what else do I love about Bali? I love the food, the people, the relaxed pace of life. It's just very easy to relax there. There's something very tranquil about it. Like if you ever saw the movie or read the book Eat, Pray, Love, Bali is where the love part of that movie takes place. And I think that it kind of makes sense because it's just so peaceful. And it has such a big like spa culture, for instance, because it's such a relaxed place. Like there's yoga, meditation, mindfulness, the whole well-being wellness industry is very, very popular there because of that, because of the peacefulness of Bali.
So if you had to name a few things that get on your nerves at times, maybe it's not the best in certain areas of lifestyle, what would you say?
Well, my answer would change depending on when you ask me. So the most recent time I was there, which was just in January, I noticed it's really popular with certain types of tourists at the moment, which I call the Instagrammers of the world, the perhaps enhanced Instagram model type people. So it's a lot of that type of stuff right now, which for me kind of clashes with the laid back naturalness of the place and the things that I really love about Bali. But just general downsides, I would say it is very far. If you're coming from North America or even Europe, it's that flight never gets any easier. I think it's getting harder and harder every year that I age. And the rebound with the jet lag, it's pretty much polar opposite. It's a tiny island, and a lot of the roads, they were put in with cars in mind. They're put in to be walked along basically through rice paddies, and they're very convoluted routes. So nowadays they basically pave those over, and it's not easy to get around the island, even on a motorbike, which is the main mode of transportation, because it's very congested and those roads are just not straightforward at all. So traffic is becoming a really big problem. And then another just general downside, it's kind of the flip side of it being such a naturally beautiful place. It's also very tectonically active and natural disaster prone. So again, I use the example of Hawaii. The reason why Hawaii has that landscape is because there's undersea activity taking place, and same thing in Bali. It's in one of the most tectonically active places in the world. So there's risk of earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, etc. Not to mention any of the man-made issues there, which there are plenty of as well. Unfortunately, pollution is a big problem in that part of the world.
When you say pollution, are you more speaking to air quality or litter on the streets, or water quality?
It's a bit of everything, unfortunately. So air quality, they do the crop clearing over there to make space for, I think it's palm oil production, but they'll burn down rainforest, for instance, or if they need to clear an area to grow crops, they'll burn that off and start over. So it is air quality, it's pollution as well. There's a plastic problem. Single-use plastic is a big deal, but that is also tied into tourism. So wherever you have a huge number of tourists, it's also a lot of garbage being generated and not necessarily systems in place to deal with that. And then water quality, I think it's affected by the pollution as well.
Is the water
everything kind of
out of the tap? Sorry to interrupt you.
That's okay. It depends on what part of the island. So up north where there are natural springs, it's fine. I drink the tap water. And then down south, absolutely not. You will really regret it if you even get a drop of the tap water into your system.
Good advice. And I just wanted to ask about the crop clearing. I know that in Thailand they do that as well, but it's mostly seasonal. So like a lot of expats will just leave for a couple months when they do it during a certain part of the harvest or some part of the crop cycle. Is it just any time of the year there, or is there a season you could plan around?
I think you could probably generally plan around the seasons for crops, but people also, that's another way that they have traditionally gotten rid of their waste. So they do little like garbage fires in their backyard. So unfortunately, that's a year-round thing that's happening all the time.
All right, well, let's move on to happier topics, because of course, every place does have its downsides. Any place in the world, including wherever you live now. I live in Paris now. There are plenty of downsides. If you live in New York, Ohio, wherever it is, they're going to be downsides no matter what. But you don't necessarily need to focus on them. Just deal with them, be prepared, take them in stride, and know your limits. If you really have a problem, if you have asthma, not a good place for you to move, but, know your own boundaries, know your own deal breakers, call them. But let's move on to its grades. So we do give grades to all of our winners in the Overseas Retirement Index. And they are 13 of them. And so I was wondering if you could speak to the grades. Because of course these grades, we try and make them as objective as possible. Lots of different factors play into them. So it's not like you personally gave Bali each of the grades it got. How do you feel about its grades? Do you disagree with any in particular, or, very much agree with any? Are there any comments you would make on its grades?
I think its grades are generally very fair. I was involved in coming up with them, so
right, exactly. I know you're a little bit biased here, but
no, I think that they're accurate. Just thinking about where it scored highly. So one thing people may not realize about Indonesia is that it has a retirement visa, which I feel like is really a selling point for this country that people don't realize is a selling point. So retirement visa for Indonesia, you have to have about 1,500 US per month in income, and then you can qualify for it pretty easily. So that is a big benefit, and it scored highly for residency, which is that one category that you just cannot ignore. If you're looking to live in a place full time, residency is really important for you. And it got an A, I believe, for residency.
And
where it scored.
Sorry, just to say, it is worth noting that in Asia, there aren't necessarily that many options for living in every country that you might want to live in. So Thailand is a good option. The Philippines has had a good option, and Indonesia, but it's not like you can just pick up and move to Asia in any country that you want and count on being able to get a visa.
Exactly.
And I think probably what dragged it down a lot is, as you mentioned, the distance factor, the fact that it is so hard to get to, and maybe a little bit of entertainment. It's not like you could go to the opera in Bali. There's plenty of local theater, local dancing, traditional style dancing, traditional style theater. But it's not like you're going to go see the opera or the symphony here in Bali. However, it makes up for it in all of the natural benefits. So the surfing, the hiking, the mountains, and all that, the scenery, everything that the scenery offers in terms of recreation. Any other notable grades that you'd like to point out for it, good or bad?
Yeah, well, on the positive side, so cost of living, it doesn't get much better than this. I think anywhere in the world, Southeast Asia is really hard to beat. So even being generous when we're coming up with the monthly budget for an expat couple living in Bali, in this case, it comes out to less than $1,000 a month. So that is something that if you're looking for a lower cost destination, could be a really good fit for you. And aside from residency, which it also got an A for, and recreation, which you already mentioned, it is really great in terms of the level of English spoken. So it's been a tourist destination for decades, and the locals are very savvy and have picked up English, including English of different accents. Like you'll get an Australian accented Indonesian person speaking to you, or maybe British, which is really entertaining, as well as other languages. Like there's German is widely spoken, French, etc. So that's another thing that might put people off about moving all the way to Asia, is the fact that the culture is so different to what they're used to. But in Bali, you won't have any trouble speaking English with the locals. And as well, the expat community is thriving there. It's very big and active and diverse. You can do any type of activity that you might be interested in, as well as activities you've never even heard of. So you mentioned all the traditional art, for instance. You could take up the local equivalent to the xylophone, for instance. My sister's boyfriend was doing that for a while. He was playing it's called gamelan, and he was trying to learn that instrument. Anyway, there's all types of things you can do there if you are looking for a big, vibrant, active expat community. It's also hard to beat for that.
So who would Bali appeal to the most in terms of, just trying to imagine the picture of someone who would be the perfect fit for an expat being really happy and really loving life in Bali?
I would say someone a little bit adventurous, because it's the type of place where there are entertaining or annoying, depending on your perspective, things, culture shock, for instance, or just the way things work there, you'll be shaking your head and either laughing or crying. So if you're more on the adventurous side, I think you would be entertained by it all. Plus, it's pretty far out there, as we've already talked about. So someone adventurous, maybe with a sense of humor, someone who appreciates natural scenery, the beach, volcanoes, the rainforest, etc. Someone who's not looking for city amenities. So as you touched on, it's not Paris, it's not London, it's not going to be as culturally active as those places, or the types of culture that we're talking about anyways, like museums, opera, etc., theater. So someone who is more of a outdoors fan, specifically lovers of the beach and just kind of deserted island type of scenery. Not so much in Bali, but if you're hopping around the islands, you'll see a lot of islands that have absolutely no people living on them, and it's kind of a cool sort of castaway feeling on some of them.
Cool. And so who, on the other hand, who would hate it here?
If you need a high level of convenience and efficiency and lots of amenities at your fingertips, and you're not flexible or willing to adapt, then you probably wouldn't be a good fit. And also, if you're concerned about some of the things that we've talked about with regards to environmental issues, then just give it a miss, because there's nothing you can do about those types of things, unfortunately. I think everyone in the world is subject to some sort of level of environmental risk, but Bali is an extreme case for sure.
Yeah, as we're seeing, the whole world right now is subject to crazy climatic oddities. But I think Bali, even long before there were any issues of climate change or odd natural disasters happening where they shouldn't happen, Bali was already on that radar. So, what does your personal budget look like here? So you mentioned your sister lives there, your mom lives there or has lived there. What would a budget for either a single person or a couple look like here?
I would say, for all comforts and a well-rounded, nice lifestyle, you'd probably want between $1,200 and $1,500 a month. Although you can get by, like I said, on less than $1,000. But I'd say between $1,200 and $1,500 is the best for being able to indulge yourself a little bit, go for nice meals, go to the spa. Maybe have some household help in the form of a cleaner or a pool person or a gardener or a security if you want, or a driver, for instance. Yeah, between $1,200 and $1,500.
Okay. And I'm thinking to myself as I'm sitting here, just trying to remember the currency. I think it's the rupiah. Is that how it's pronounced? Yeah. And what is the exchange rate volatile? Is it more or less stable with the US dollar?
The way we always figure it, so 10,000 rupiah is about $1, and that's the easiest way to convert it in your mind. Although in reality, it's slightly less than that. So if you have 10,000 rupiah, you actually have maybe 75 cents or something along those lines. But I don't know about the long-term stability of the exchange rate. I think it's been like that more or less for a while, maybe fluctuating in a couple cent ranges.
Oh yeah, of course. I just wonder if it was, kind of one of these currencies that roller coasters up and down. So that's interesting. It'll definitely take a bit of an adjustment to get used to taking off all those zeros every time you try and do math in your head when you're in the supermarket. But I guarantee you do get used to it. It takes a minute. But all right. So what do you do for fun when you're in Bali?
First thing after getting off the very long flight, I'd like to schedule a massage. So massage is it's part of the culture naturally. It's not something that has been imported as like a luxury service. Balinese massage is like a long practice tradition. So lucky for us, it's priced kind of as a regular service. You can have an hour-long massage, for instance, for $5 to $10. So I take full advantage of that when I'm there. A lot of going to the beach. Depending on the state of the waves, I might try to go out surfing, but probably not. I'm kind of a chicken when it comes to surfing there. The waves are no joke. It's a supreme surf destination, so it's not necessarily for everyone. The food is amazing. So especially down in the south, where which is the focus of the expat community, they are incredibly innovative when it comes to gastronomy, and you can have any type of food you can possibly imagine, and it's extremely high quality, and the dishes are beautifully presented, every time I'm there, I'm amazed. Just comparing it even to London, where I live, especially to Canada. Canada needs to step up its game in comparison. And there's a big coffee culture as well. I love going to cafes and trying out the different types of brews that they have going on. I think that's really interesting. And then what else do we like to do? A lot of outdoor stuff. So you can go mountain biking, you can go scuba diving, snorkeling, swimming. There are the mountains, or the volcanoes rather, and you can go for a hike if you want to. Just a lot of stuff in the outdoors.
Cool. Yeah, I will say I don't have a ton of experience with Indonesian food, but every time I go to the Netherlands, I love getting Indonesian food there because, of course, there was the colonialism that happened way back when. And so the Dutch ended up bringing a lot of Indonesian influence back to their homeland. And I don't know what it's called in Indonesia, but the rijsttafel, it's called in Dutch, is the kind of typical just assortment of local delicacies, or I guess not local to Dutch, but Balinese or Indonesian delicacies, and I absolutely love it. I never miss a chance to indulge in that when I'm in the Netherlands. Anything else to say?
Maybe just one thing to mention is that may not be a place for someone who has a intense health issue. The healthcare there is fine. It's nothing spectacular or cutting edge. A lot of expats go to Thailand or Singapore, depending on what their policy allows, to have complex procedures. Bali's not really a place where you'd want to have a major operation, for instance. Mm-hmm. So that's another downside that I didn't mention, but definitely important.
The nearest place, if you did have like a major issue, what would the nearest alternative be?
Well, so they do have hospitals for that type of thing, but I think Singapore is the nearest. So whole other country.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for that insight. This has been a great chat with Sophia, our in-house Bali expert. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your insights. I hope it's been useful to all the potential Bali expats out there. If you have any further questions, please let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. We do a new one of these videos and post them every Saturday. Thanks for listening, and happy trails.